Hey, what's up everybody? So this video is not the usual video. I would call it a conversation and not an interview with Xian Dongmei. First, I'm talking to you here in my palace in Seoul, Korea, because I'm already in the next country. You can see a very small room. I just isolate myself for 3 or 4 days trying to do all those videos about China, and so then I can focus on Korea. Anyway, so I've met Xian Dongmei when I was in Guangzhou, and she's double Olympic champion in Greece. And then after being pregnant and becoming a mother, she came back and became Olympic champion again in her home country, in Beijing. So she's a true judo legend in China, and her popularity go way beyond judo, as she's also president of the school where she is. So I wanted to go for interview with her. I had a translator, though with the language barrier and everything, I didn't quite understood how this would work, so I ended up being on the talk with her already, and that was the interview, which I didn't know. So I filmed only halfway, and actually it was more them asking me questions about French system than me asking questions. So that's why I would not call it an interview. And that interview go with the next video that I will publish about the trip from Guangzhou to the next place. Is that normally in judo you have white belt, black belt, and back then it was okay for kids to wait for years, like 10 years, before being black belt because they were having passions, But then when Japanese arrived in Europe and started to teach to European kids, they saw that if you teach the kids the same thing for too long, they give up. And so it was just a way to motivate them, to keep going. And so the thing is, they made those belts mostly for the age. But for example, if you come tomorrow to judo in France and you're already 20, 30 years old, it will not be exactly the same. You can go from white belt to blue belt just within 1 year. In the end, belt is just a tool for the judo club to try to motivate the kids to stay longer, because the federation will never check what you're doing. And so normally most of the clubs do the same thing. They should learn by the book. But in reality, it's not like this. Like, every club is a little bit different. And so the only official national examination is the one that you get for the black belt. The black belt, everybody have the same test, But for the other belt, it's more for the clubs to say, okay, if you stay 6 months, then you will have your examination for the next belt. And mostly the teacher will never make the student fail, because the goal is to motivate them.
Who has like judo club or judo classes?
Interesting. It changed. In the past, yes, judo was mandatory at school in the past. And now it's not like that anymore. Now it's private. Judo club have private. It belongs to the city, but it's also some kind of private. But it's not in the school anymore. The school judo club in France are for high level. So you have different high level structures. So 550,000 judo player, okay? 5,700 judo clubs, and then 27 high level regional centers, 4 national junior level center, and 1 Olympic center. So it's working like a pyramid. And so you go to school judo club only when you start to go to those high level, because in the beginning you're in your club, and if you're good enough, you go to that special school and you have to follow the school program and the judo program. So the big question in France for the French Judo Federation and the Olympic Federation is, should we put our time and money into that high level pyramid, or should we put our time and money on the basis? Should we make the judo club stronger, or should we make the pyramid stronger? If we make the pyramid stronger, that makes the judo club weaker. If we make the club stronger, that makes the pyramid weaker. So it's very hard to do. Also, one thing I want to say, don't take everything I say for 100% true. It's like, of course I say what I believe is true, but I was not prepared for those questions and everything, so I didn't search before. And so, for example, I'm talking about my experience in France in the past. And for example, in my experience was 4 Pôle France, which is national structure for junior level. And I discovered that no, in France there is much more, something like 8 or something like that. So things changed, and always double check. And of course, you can comment or directly contact me, and I will let you know if something changed.
She has a question for the coaches in the judo club. Are these like funded by the government or like they're just like self-funded?
It depends of there is judo club level, and depending on the judo club level, it's either you're funded by yourself or funded by the government. If you go to one of this pyramid regional school, this is mostly governmental that pay for the judo coach, but the judo coach have to do the graduation himself. He pay for his school. So mostly the teacher, they do their class and pay by themselves, except if they're like ex big champion.
It's kind of like similar with China. Like the top tier teams, they were like funded by the government.
Yes. She was asking me earlier about the belt in France, and so my question is, what about China? Because I see in many schools so many people black belt, and people told me that the black belt doesn't really mean anything in China. So is it true? Is the black belt have no meaning in China?
它是这样，因为中国呢原来也是没有搞这个晋级，就是没有就是
Like right now, in China, we used to only have white and black. White is for amateur, and black is for the professional, like athletes. But right now, like we kind of like trying to learn from the other countries, like their system, like so they have like black, brown, etc. So like the schools that you visit, they have like a lot of students have like the black and white. So it's kind of like they were the school decided to do that. It's not like mandatory or from the federation. They have a regulation in China, like different clubs, different schools. They have they can decide their own system. But for the athletes, like the schools that you visit, like they are kind of like professional athlete schools. So all their students they are like doing sports. They only do sports, so they have their own belt as well. So it's all black.
China judo is known to be strong, especially as heavyweight woman. The thing is, she's double Olympic champion in not heavyweight, obviously. She's in a lower weight category, so that means a lot of technicals, you know. So what made her different from the rest of China? Because China have more results in heavyweight. Why her could get results while most of the other lightweight can't?
Yeah, she said that it's kind of like her personal interests, like because like she started not from judo, she started like
wrestling,
yes. And she's done like long distance jogging, like running sports athletes before. So she was very used to like to learn all the techniques like all by herself, even though like the coaches might not like kind of like focused on the small weight in judo, but so it's kind of like personal and depends on the person. Because she said that she used a lot of wrestling techniques in judo as well. And it's kind of like from China's traditions, like all the Chinese wrestlings from the the other parts in China. So the techniques she used, and also as well as her personal interest about all the techniques, and to help her to win in the lower. The secretary was also she also won a world champion.
Which city?
In France.
Which year?
1989. It's called
那是不是锦标？不只是
World Championship.
不是。
I was not born.
Yeah. She said you were not born.
I understand. She probably means the international Paris tournament.
Yeah.
It's the biggest tournament in the world.
Yeah.
I used to go every year over there. Well, one question for both of them then. In China, what's the afterlife of being a champion? I'm not talking about being Asian champion or being Chinese champion, like a major title. Is it something that changed your life forever? Is it something that changed your life for a few years? Or what is it?
Like if you're like participating like in tournaments or the international games, like the government will funded you even after like you retired from the sports. So pretty much they will help you get a job if you want to. Like teachers, like we all did, and also like working in the government and coaches, like the government will help you to get a job.
Okay.
And it's also guaranteed by the government. Yeah.
Interesting.
法国的
How about France?
It's a complicated topic. Well, for example, being an Olympic champion in Paris 2024, the last Olympic, was a paycheck of 80,000 euro. Supposedly, you should have job more easily, but there is no proper program. Like there is nothing that makes sure that you would have, and that's a problem, and that's something we're working on right now. There is something that happened recently, not so recently. It was in Rio Olympic Games. Yes, one French girl heavyweight won the Olympic championship, and she was already very, very strong. Like she was already all the time in the top 3 in the world, and she won. And she retired after that because she said, okay, I'm Olympic champion, I'm silver medal at the world championship, I've done enough, and she was old enough. The thing is, that girl was overweight, and she was black, and she was a woman. So this is 3 minority kind of things, you know. And most of the people, after being Olympic champion, life is easier for them. But her, just 6 months after being Olympic champion, she had to go, how to call that, kind of begging for money because she didn't have anything anymore and nobody would help her, nobody would hire her. And so that raised a new problem in France that our champion need to be taken care of and that there is discrimination between like the traditional white male athletes and those women were also French, but look at that. So there is no guarantee, but we're trying to push. Since that, we're trying to push to make things better.
She said that they said that they've been visited, like also training in Paris, like so that they when they see like the French, you know, the judo athletes, they were like kind of like they were driven by their own interest to learn judo. But in China, like it's kind of like it's, a lot of athletes they were mandated to do that.
Yes.
There are a lot of regulations to guide them, and a lot of regulations like for the athletes. So it's like kind of different between the two systems.
The system is very different.
Yeah.
And this is I've been teaching in 46 countries now, and it happened often that I'm going to the countries, we don't speak the same language, they don't speak English, and so there's a language barrier difference. But most of the time this is not a problem because in the end we do the same sports and we can understand. China is the first countries where I have trouble communicate what I want, not because of the language barrier, but because of the cultural difference.
Yeah.
And for example, my way of teaching judo is to try to promote and boost the creativity of athletes to grow by themselves, not with the group, but by themselves to make something a little bit artistic, I would say. You know, and like in China, everything is like when they start the class, they have to be in lines, like this, you know. And me, when I'm teaching them, I'm like, no, you don't make lines. Go everywhere, make whatever, like make mistakes, you know. And I want them to make mistakes. If they make mistakes, I'm happy because then we can correct the mistakes. So my system is very, very different, and I think it's very interesting for them and for me actually in China. But that was the first time in 46 countries that I struggle to teach what I want to teach. Do she know who is, you know Michael Phelps?
Yeah, Michael Phelps, American swimmer.
Yes. Is she familiar with him, you think? Did she know who is he?
Yeah, she doesn't know who she is.
Probably not, because there's something I want to tell about that. Like the high level and the Olympic training, you can prepare for everything and everything's gonna happen, but there is always things that you cannot prepare for. in the high-low, you know. And if your brain is just working like a robot, that okay, there is this situation, I react this situation, there's this situation, I react this situation. The thing is, at high level, it will happen that there is something you don't know because you didn't learn how to react for that. And the thing is, you need to be smart enough and creative enough to be able to adapt and react to that. And so probably because she's double Olympic champion, she had many of those events. And I wanted to talk about Michael Phelps because actually it was in China when he became many-time Olympic champion. Something happened. He started to swim, he did all of his routine kind of things, you know. And when he started to swim, he noticed that some water was coming into his goggle, you know. And then he swam and more until it was completely blurry, you know. And so most of the athletes would be like, okay, that's it, my race is fucked up, I stop, you know. But him, he was like, no, I'm going to adapt. And that's what's the difference between champions and people that just do what they're told to do. He was like, okay, I'm going to adapt, I've been doing that so many times. And he closed his eyes and he continued to brace. And when he arrived, his goggles were full of water. He couldn't see anything. He took it off and he watched and he had the world record.
Yeah, it's kind of like very hard for China's whole system like to be like 360 degrees change.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so for that we are actually learning from all the other countries, like how they are doing their teachings and how they use their materials to help guide those athletes. So, and for a lot of, you know, she also said about when it comes to a match, it's kind of like the main goal is to get down your opponent and get a score. So that we're actually learning from each other and to learn all the good things from different countries right now.
And I was saying that okay, one thing that could be a problem in China is that lack of creativity, you know, for example. But on the other hand, I see the problem, but I don't know what's the solution. Because on the other hand, okay, there is that lack of creativity, but China is 1,300,000,000, like so many people, you know. And so if you make like full creativity for everybody, then it's anarchy. It's not possible, you know, with such a big country. So I see the thing, but to solve it, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, she said like there are like pros and cons, like, you know, to these systems. Like if you're like letting the kids too relaxed or too chill, so they might be like fighting each other or even like running around in the judo court. So that they're trying to like find a balance between how to get those people or get those kids to be creative, but also like kind of followed by the guidance of the coaches. She said Japan is also like very strict about this.
Yes, Japan somehow is very similar. I would say China, in terms of judo, is very similar to Japan. The difference is that judo is very old in Japan, and in China it's much more new, much more recent. And that's one of the things that I believe. Like when I see the judo clubs, the dojo, the mats, the number of people doing judo in China, and now we can see more often actually good results coming in the international competition. Just like 3 weeks ago in Uzbekistan, they get some medals again in the Grand Slam over there. So I think that China could become very, very strong because there is much more people than Japan actually, and the government is pushing a little bit, like helping with money and everything. So I think that if they find the balance that she was talking about with the disciplines, but also the creativity, China could become so strong. And this is the same situation in India. I have one question actually, because one of the common things, especially nowadays for performances, is to travel, like doing training camps all around the world, doing competition all around the world. And actually she's known of being a judo player that we would not see too much. Like she would not compete too much abroad. She would not do too much of that. So I'm curious to know about her preparation, her training. She was training mostly in China,
or she was going to Japan or Russia or something for the preparation.
She said that back in her times in 2004 and 2008, she mainly training at in China because we have our own centers, and another big problem is funding. So you have to pay a lot of have a lot of high budget training abroad. But she has been training in Japan, Germany, and France as well. So that back in her times she's mainly like training in China. And she said that it's like kind of like good enough for her, like to grow her techniques.
Yes.
And but for the Chinese, right, in this generation, before the pandemics,
Yes.
a lot of athletes also go to abroad to train and go to the training camps in Europe as well.
Yeah. And so the thing is, France is so strong that they used to say, it's okay, we train in France and that's it. We'll go in Japan once a year and that's it. And so they totally changed the system. France used to be a country where we are the country people come to visit. And now not anymore. Now we're doing like the tour, and maybe in 5 years it's gonna be different. Like, I don't know. But I think it, like right now the trend is like this, and you need to go like a little bit everywhere to learn from each other.
Is this funded by the government, the athletes, or themselves?
If you are in the Olympic, like if you're in the high level, yes. If you are in the pyramid, yes.
So we are taking you to the restaurant for this art
去年拿
center.
了8个奥运冠军。
We have like 1,500 athletes in this art training center, and we have 8 gold medals last year.
In what competition?
Olympic Games.
At the Olympics.
Yeah, and Olympics.
Wow.
We have 8 gold medals. Yeah,
Okay,
in
so
this year.
badminton, diving.
Techniques, swimming, the girls in the swimming pool,
跳水5块，
and diving. Yeah.
全红婵。
Okay, so I hope it was interesting enough conversation for you guys. Now let's go for some food.